With age, a woman loses the fear of being inconvenient. And that's when she finally becomes herself. A woman after 40 wakes up one morning and feels that something inside her has cracked. Not loudly, not catastrophically, just quietly. The thing that used to hold her life in integrity simply stopped holding. Everything she had built for decades suddenly lost its meaning. The words with which she described herself no longer matched who she had become. She looks at the familiar kitchen, at her husband, at her children, at her reflected gaze in the mirror, and does not understand where she herself is. And this is not depression. This is awakening. 40 years is not a crisis of age. It is the moment when the illusion that one can live without feeling ends. Until this moment, a woman most often lives for others, for family, for work, for relationships, in order to conform. She chooses to be needed, because otherwise she is not seen. She chooses care because the fear of being selfish is absorbed with her mother's milk. She chooses patience because women's anger is punished from childhood. She chooses softness because women's strength frightens. And year after year, this softness turns into a shell that suffocates. But society applauds because she is proper, stable, reliable. Only at night, when everything falls asleep, a quiet wave rises inside. But where am I? This feeling of emptiness does not come suddenly. It has been maturing for a long time. In every phrase, "everything is fine," said through tiredness. In every later, postponed to an indefinite tomorrow. In every, the main thing is that everyone is comfortable. The woman after 40 suddenly discovers that her entire existence is built around other people's needs. Her boundaries are erased, desires forgotten. Her body has become a functional tool. And when she finally notices this, the psyche can no longer remain silent. That is when what those around her call "she's lost her mind" begins. But this is not madness. This is the first attempt to become alive. When a woman first allows herself not to smile, when she does not want to explain, when she stops pretending that everything is under control, when she is irritated by what used to seem normal. This is not destruction. This is the return of sensitivity. It's just that to a world accustomed to a convenient woman, a living one seems dangerous. She is called hysterical, selfish, ungrateful, because she no longer agrees to be a servant of other people's emotions, because she says no, because she does not want to endure. And this frightens those who are accustomed to her unconditional readiness to give. The woman after 40 is not losing her mind, she is losing illusions. The illusion that if she is good, she will be loved. The illusion that if she takes care of everyone, someone will take care of her. The illusion that love is sacrifice. Everything that was previously the foundation collapses because one cannot stand on it forever. And the pain that comes with this is not accidental. This is the pain of the birth of a new woman. The one who does not want to be needed, wants to be real. She does not understand what is happening, and this is frightening. But fear is part of the awakening. One cannot wake up gently. One must go through chaos to feel alive again. The world is accustomed to the obedient, to those who do not argue, do not doubt, do not ask uncomfortable questions. But after 40, a woman can no longer be like that. She is tired of being polite at the cost of her truth. She is tired of being strong when no one holds her. She is tired of being understandable when there is a storm inside. And when this fatigue reaches its limit, she begins to act, not according to rules, not according to expectations, not according to plan. It is then that those around her whisper, "She's lost her mind." But this is not madness. This is liberation from a system that has been fed by her obedience for decades. At this moment, Relationships, friendships, familiar roles collapse, not because she has become worse, but because she has stopped playing. She begins to say what she feels, to do what she wants, to refuse what does not resonate. And people accustomed to her former version feel threatened. After all, she is no longer the service center for other people's needs. She has become a living being who has a choice, and this is destructive for those who lived at her expense. Therefore, the world retaliates. It blames, shames, isolates, but it is already too late. Because once, a woman who survived in other people's expectations stops fearing loneliness. She chooses herself. And this is where the most important thing begins. When everything inside is collapsing, the woman thinks she is losing her mind. In fact, she is losing a false identity. All the musts, shoulds, improper, leave like husks, and silence remains. Scary, but honest. In this silence, she hears her own breathing for the first time. And it says, "Now it's my turn." This is the moment of truth. Not beautiful, not inspiring, not glamorous, but real. Because to go crazy is sometimes the only way to stop living a lie. But there is a reason that no one talks about, the one that hides deeper than social roles, deeper than fatigue, deeper than disappointment, the one from which this internal madness grows. And if it is not understood, the woman will wander between pain and guilt, unaware of what is happening. More on this later. Society instills in women from childhood that maturity is peace, that if you have lived life correctly, harmony should come by 40. Home, family, stability, grateful children, a respectful husband, social recognition. But the truth is that by this age, most women feel not peace, but an internal fracture, because everything they were taught turns out to be a lie, because a life built on other people's expectations stops breathing. And when this lie begins to crumble, the woman feels that she is losing her mind, although in fact she is simply seeing reality without filters. For the first time, the main illusion is that maturity should be quiet, that a woman should calm down, resign, let go of ambitions, that the time of storms has passed and now she needs to be wise. But this word often hides submission. Wisdom, in the opinion of society, is the ability to be silent when it hurts, to smile when it is empty, to be grateful when you are not seen. But true wisdom is the insight that you can no longer endure, that you can no longer be soft for the sake of other people's comfort, that you cannot be alive and always right at the same time. The second illusion is that family saves. For decades, a woman believes that she must sacrifice herself for the family, that the meaning of life is service to loved ones. But a family built on self-denial turns into a cage. The husband gets used to the fact that she is always there, always understands, always lends a shoulder. Children take her care for granted. Her role becomes a function. She gives, but no one notices that she herself is already empty. And when she one day ceases to be a source of endless support, everyone begins to panic. What happened to her? She simply stopped being a battery for other people's systems. She simply chose herself for the first time. The third illusion is that love heals everything. A woman is taught that the main thing is to find a man who will love her, that with him will come peace, confidence, meaning. But after 40, a woman suddenly understands that no love saves you if you do not belong to yourself, that relationships cannot fill someone who is empty inside, that love built on the fear of loneliness does not heal but cripples. And when she sees this, all the romantic architecture built since youth collapses in her. She realizes the love she was taught is dependency, beautifully framed in a fairy tale. The fourth illusion is that self-sacrifice makes her good, that the more she endures, the nobler she looks, that suffering is spirituality. But suffering without meaning is slavery.
The patience for which society praises women is often a form of internal paralysis. A woman endures for years because she is afraid of being bad, afraid to say, "I'm not well," afraid to destroy the usual system. But when too much unspoken accumulates inside, everything explodes. And this explosion is called a crisis, although it is simply liberation from the lie called "be strong." The fifth illusion is that positive thinking saves. Modern culture suggests that women smile, be grateful, meditate, and repeat affirmations. They say, "You create reality yourself, just think positive." But positive thinking is a new form of suppression. This is a way not to feel the pain. This is an instruction on how to glue cracks with beautiful words. But pain does not go away from being renamed a lesson. It demands to be heard. And if a woman drowns it out with pseudo-spirituality, the psyche will begin to scream louder. In the form of hysteria, apathy, panic, meaningless
anger. This is not weakness. This is the language of a body that no longer wants to be a container for other people's projections. The sixth illusion is that age deprives of meaning. In youth, a woman is told that everything important happens before 40. That next is decline, fading, mature beauty. But 40 brings not the end, but the beginning. It just doesn't look like romantic stories. This is the beginning of an inner life. Before this, the woman was external, a wife, mother, employee, hostess, friend. After 40, all this collapses because a personality awakens inside, the one who was never allowed to speak. And when this personality comes to the surface, the old roles no longer fit. She is cramped in the scenarios written by others, and this is what society calls madness. The woman is not losing her mind. She is losing the ability to live in a lie. Her psyche can no longer withstand double standards. Her body no longer wants to serve other people's goals. Her soul demands space. This is the destruction of illusions. Not romantic, not beautiful, not approved, real. Because in order to build the authentic, the false must be destroyed. And this process always looks like a catastrophe, but freedom comes after it. Most women try to hold on to the old system. They go to psychologists, read books, look for techniques on how to return harmony. But the harmony they are looking for was a prison. They want to return to a false stability, where everything is clear, but dead. Therefore, therapy often does not help, because it works with symptoms, not with the essence. Because beneath the problems of relationships, fatigue, and anxiety hides one question: who am I if I no longer have to? And this question is not treated with advice. It requires the destruction of the personality built on duty. The system does not want the woman to wake up, because an awakened woman ceases to be manageable. She no longer fears loneliness, does not need approval, does not seek recognition. She becomes a source, not a consumer. And this is dangerous for a world where feminine energy has been used as a resource for centuries. Therefore, culture, religion, media, psychology are built in such a way that the woman continues to feel guilt, to doubt herself, to be ashamed of her desires, to think that something is wrong with her if she is tired of being good. But as soon as she realizes that guilt is a tool of control, fear disappears, and then everything collapses. The awakening of a woman after 40 is not meek spiritual growth. It is the destruction of a contract with a lie. It is an explosion that sweeps away the decorations of a proper life. It is a scream from within. I can't anymore. And when this scream finally sounds, everything around comes into motion. The husband loses his accustomed control. The children begin to resist. Girlfriends distance themselves. Society whispers, something is wrong with her. But it is precisely at this moment that the woman becomes herself. Because only by going through destruction can the real be built. But there is an even deeper illusion, one that even psychotherapists rarely talk about. The illusion that the old can be returned, that if you try, everything will be as before again. But after awakening, there is no turning back. When the eyes have opened, it is impossible to fall asleep again. When a woman has seen her truth, no relationship, no role, no promises will force her to live the old way. And the harder she tries to return to the past, the more painful it becomes, because she is drawn to where it is already impossible to breathe. And then she either breaks or is born anew. This point of no return is frightening. It looks like an abyss, but it is here that internal freedom begins. Because for the first time, the woman stops looking for meaning in the external. She no longer waits for recognition, does not try to prove her value. She begins to feel herself from the inside. And this feeling is not joy, not delight, not euphoria. It is a quiet, dense knowledge. I am. It does not need confirmation. It does not ask for permission. It simply lives. And at this moment, a new stage begins. When a woman no longer wants to be understood, she wants to be real. And this is what the world does not forgive. But it is precisely in this that the strength lies. But there is something deeper, something that is destroyed in the unconscious when she ceases to be needed. More on this later. If these words resonate, subscribe to the channel. This way, more people will be able to hear the truth that is hidden from them. Because what is happening to a woman after 40 is not a disease, not a crisis, not a whim. This is an awakening that the system has called madness for decades. If you feel that there is something of yours in these words, subscribe. Let the algorithms show this to others who are also tired of being proper, but don't know how to be alive. Most women go through the pain in loneliness. They are ashamed of their feelings because they are afraid to hear, "You are just at a certain age." It's hormones. Take a self-development course. But you are not broken. You just no longer want to be part of a game in which love is measured by obedience. Subscribing is not for the sake of numbers. It is a sign that there are many of us, that we are no longer silent, that there is a space where you can be yourself without masks, without the role of a savior, without the fear of condemnation. If you understand what is being talked about, subscribe to the channel. Let this truth reach those who are just on the threshold of this path, because each of us needs a point of support when everything is collapsing. We are creating a community of those who choose not to return to false stability. This is not about opposing the world. It is about returning to yourself. And if you feel that these words touch your truth, it means you are already on the way. But there are deeper mechanisms. What happens inside a woman after 40 cannot be understood through advice and slogans. It is not just fatigue, not just a crisis, not just hormonal changes. This is a deep movement of the unconscious that requires recognition. And if it is not heard, it will begin to speak the language of destruction. Next, about how the shadow, complexes, and internal archetypes govern life, while a person believes that everything is under control. When a woman after 40 begins to collapse from within, it is not just a crisis. It is a process that Jung called individuation, the moment when the personality ceases to be a set of roles and masks, and for the first time encounters its own shadow. Before this, she lived according to a script that others wrote. Parents, society, partner, children. But now, The unconscious demands to reclaim power, and the stronger the woman resists, the more painful the process of awakening becomes. The psyche does not tolerate emptiness. Everything that was repressed for years rises to the surface. Anger, guilt, envy, fear, sexual desires, a feeling of worthlessness. Everything that did not fit the image of the good one. These energies did not disappear. They were simply locked up. But when the familiar structure collapses, they come out. This is the moment when the woman thinks she is losing her mind. In fact, she is meeting her exiled parts, with the girl who was shamed for tears, with the teenager who learned to be silent so as not to lose love, with the adult who saved others all her life, because she was afraid that without it, she would not be loved. Freud said that repressed impulses do not die. They return in a distorted form. In women after 40, this manifests as irritability, sudden outbursts of rage, fatigue from everything that used to be familiar. These are not whims. This is the return of repressed life. When you suppress your desires for decades for the sake of other people's comfort, the body begins to take revenge. It refuses. It gets tired. It demands attention. Illnesses, apathy, insomnia are not enemies but signals. The unconscious is knocking on the door that you have kept closed for too long. Jung called this the encounter with the shadow. The shadow is everything that you do not want to see in yourself. A woman is accustomed to considering herself kind, caring, patient. But inside there is anger, sexuality, ambition, aggression, pride, strength. Everything that did not correspond to the ideal was sent to the basement of the psyche. But when the mask of the good one cracks, the shadow comes out. And if it is not accepted, it will begin to destroy everything around. That is why families, careers, familiar relationships collapse after 40. Not because the woman is losing her mind, but because the internal energy finally demands to be lived. This does not mean that you need to allow yourself everything. It means stop running away from the truth. A woman who accepts
her shadow becomes whole. She no longer plays the role of a saint. She can be angry without feeling guilty. She can desire without justifying herself. She can refuse without feeling shame. She ceases to be an object, becomes a subject. And then a transformation occurs. The energy that was previously used for suppression becomes a source of strength. In archetypal psychology, there is the concept of destruction of the mother. A woman who has lived her whole life for others must destroy the image of the mother to give birth to herself as a woman. This is painful because the internal code says, you are betraying. But this is not betrayal. This is growing up. It is impossible to be truly loving if you live out of a sense of duty. True love is born when the need to save disappears. When you say, I choose not to be needed. I choose to be alive. The midlife crisis is not a loss, but a return to who you were before you became someone for others. And there is a lot of pain in this return. After all, you have to face the void, to admit that much was an illusion, that not all relationships were love, not all care was kindness, not all sacrifice was a feat. But through this comes true freedom, because by accepting the truth, you cease to be dependent on other people's gaze. A woman who has met her shadow begins to feel a strange clarity. She no longer spends energy on explanations. Her words become simple and precise. Her presence acquires strength. She can be silent, and this silence sounds louder than any excuses. She ceases to be a decoration of someone's life and becomes the axis of her own. And this is what frightens those around her. From convenient, she becomes free. But for this to happen, one must go through destruction. One must allow oneself to be in the darkness. One must stop saving others, and for the first time ask, and what do I feel?
This question changes everything. It brings out the forgotten woman, the one who once dreamed, felt, wanted. And when she comes out, the old system collapses. The man next to her loses his accustomed power. Children see that their mother is not an ideal but a person. The world cracks because the main heroine leaves the convenient script. Jung wrote, "What you resist governs you." When a woman stops resisting her shadows, she ceases to be a puppet of the unconscious. She becomes the mistress of her inner drama. She is not hurt by other people's opinions. She is not frightened by loneliness. She is not seduced by the masks of success. She knows who she is, and this knowledge cannot be taken away. The paradox is that it is precisely through destruction that a woman is born for the first time. To become herself, she needs to die, not with her body but with her image. The one who was always convenient dies. The one who always saved dissolves. The one who always endured disappears. And a new one is born, quiet, strong, honest. She does not seek recognition. She does not wait for
applause. She simply is. This is true maturity, not in peace, not in stability, not in wise quotes, but in living your own darkness and emerging from it not broken, but whole. But there is one darkness that cannot be jumped over. It must be lived through. More on this later. When a woman first stops saving others, the world collapses. She sees how quickly those who were around for profit disappear, and how anxiously those who are used to her endless care react. But it is precisely at this moment that real life begins, because for the first time, attention returns inward, and what used to seem like selfishness becomes an act of honesty. In order not to collapse again, one must learn to live differently. Not out of duty, not out of fear, not out of guilt, but out of presence. The very first thing you need to learn is to notice where you are lying to yourself. Every "it's okay" pronounced through tiredness is a lie. Every "it's nothing" when you want to scream is a lie. Every time you smile, hiding resentment is a betrayal of yourself. A woman accustomed to saving has become a master of self-deception. She convinces herself that the fatigue will pass, that loneliness is a phase, that patience is a virtue. But patience that destroys you is not strength. It is a form of self-destruction. And the only way to get out of this trap is to stop lying to yourself for the sake of the world around you. The second is to allow yourself anger. Women have been told for centuries that anger makes them ugly, that irritation is weakness, that true love forgives everything. But anger is the energy of life. It is a signal that boundaries have been violated. It is a voice that says, enough. When you suppress anger, it turns into fatigue, illness, apathy. When you allow yourself to feel it, not by destroying others, but by observing, it turns into clarity. It shows where you are losing yourself. And then anger becomes a tool of awareness. The third is to allow yourself to destroy the inauthentic. A woman has been building her life on compromises for decades. She bound herself with obligations that have long lost their meaning. She remained in relationships where there is no warmth, worked where she had long burned out, maintained connections that are no longer alive. And now the moment of destruction comes, not out of revenge but out of love for the truth. Destruction is not chaos but purification. It is not a refusal of life but its renewal. When you remove the false, space remains for the real. The fourth is to stop healing others. From childhood, a woman learned to care. First for her parents, then for her partner, then for her children. Her meaning was always outside. But by saving everyone around, she lost herself. It's time to return the energy back. The world does not need another martyr. The world needs a woman who knows boundaries. A woman who says, I am not obliged to fix what I did not break. When she stops healing other people's wounds, She finds the strength to touch her own. And then, the real healing begins. The fifth is to reclaim the body. The psyche does not live separately from the flesh. Years of suppression make the body stony. It remembers everything: shame, fear, guilt, control. It carries unspoken feelings like frozen lava. And only through bodiliness can one come alive again. Breath, movement, dance, contact with the skin, with pain, with pleasure. These are not just practices. This is returning home. When a woman begins to hear the body, it teaches her boundaries. It shows where yes is and where no is. And then decisions are made not by the mind, but by intuition. Not out of fear, but out of truth. The sixth is to learn to be in silence. A woman accustomed to living through others is afraid of silence. In it, you can hear what was previously drowned out by deeds, worries, conversations. But it is silence that returns internal order. This is not comfort. This is the space of truth. In silence, everything you avoided feeling is exposed. And if you do not run away, clarity emerges through the pain. In this clarity, the illusions of control disappear. Only breath remains, only presence, only life. The seventh is to let go of guilt. Guilt is the main whip with which women are controlled. She is forced to feel guilty for fatigue, for anger, for the desire for peace, for refusal, for success, for joy. But guilt is not conscience. It is a tool of training. It keeps in slavery, not allowing to go beyond the boundaries of other people's expectations. When a woman stops believing in guilt, she stops being obedient. She reclaims her power. She stops asking for permission to be herself. The eighth is to acknowledge loneliness. After 40, it comes inevitably. Old connections fall away. Old roles no longer work. At first, it seems like punishment, but loneliness is not emptiness. It is pure space. In it, you meet your true self, without witnesses, without reflections. And this meeting is frightening, but it is what makes you whole, because only in loneliness can you hear your truth. Only there can you stop being a function and become a person. And finally, the ninth, to start living not out of fear, but out of choice. Most of the decisions a woman made were dictated by fear. Fear of being abandoned, condemned, misunderstood. Now is the time to choose, not for the sake of security, but for the sake of truth. Let it hurt. Let it be incomprehensible. Let it be scary, but it will be yours. Because when a woman begins to choose herself, the world around her rebuilds. To go crazy is sometimes the only way to return to oneself. This is not destruction. This is awakening. This is not the end of the family. This is the end of slavery. This is not the loss of love. This is the beginning of honesty. The woman who stopped being convenient becomes alive.
And her strength is no longer in softness, not in patience, not in service. Her strength is in truth. And then everything around becomes different, not ideal, but real. The world no longer demands adaptation because the woman ceases to be its reflection. She becomes its center. But there is still one step ahead, the most painful, the most honest, the most liberating. More on this later. When a woman goes through the darkness and emerges from it, she never returns as she was before. Her gaze becomes calm, but there is power in this calmness. Her words sound soft, but behind them is unyielding knowledge. She no longer needs recognition, because she has recognized herself. There is no more struggle for love in her, because she has stopped deserving what is already her natural right, to be. After 40, a woman does not lose her mind. She loses illusions. The illusion that love must last forever. The illusion that family is a guarantee of safety. The illusion that being needed means being valuable. The illusion that without the approval of others, she will disappear. All these constructions collapse, and silence remains in their place. In this silence, there is no fuss, no desire to prove, no desire to please. There is only presence. And it is this presence that begins to change everything around. Many families do not withstand the awakening of the woman, not because she becomes cold or indifferent, but because her energy stops fueling the system of dependency. She no longer plays the savior, does not service other people's traumas, does not carry everyone on herself. She no longer agrees to a lie for the sake of peace. The man who is used to receiving attention and care as a given does not understand what is happening. Children, accustomed to unconditional maternal support, for the first time encounter a living person, not a function. And it seems that she is destroying the family. But in fact, she is destroying the lie. A family built on submission and fear cannot survive when honesty comes into it. Those who survived next to an awakened woman also change, because her truth is contagious. She does not teach, does not preach, does not prove. She simply lives differently, without compromises with herself, without fuss, without fear of loneliness. And her example forces others to either leave or grow. The awakening of one person is always a challenge to the system. But without this challenge, movement is impossible. A woman who has gone through madness becomes a mirror. In her, others see their shadows. Someone hates her for this. Someone is drawn to her. Someone runs away. But she no longer tries to be understood. She knows everyone sees exactly as much as they are ready to see. Her task is not to explain, but to be. To be an example of the fact that it is possible to live without fear, without lies, without dependency. In this state, the former anxieties disappear. She no longer asks if someone loves her, because she knows that love cannot be an exchange. She no longer asks who she should be, because she understands that everything is already
there. Her life becomes quieter, but deeper. Simple things acquire taste. She again feels the body, smells, time, breath. In these little things appears what was not there before, life without tension. But the path to this silence does not pass without a trace. Losses remain behind. People she could not save, relationships that did not withstand the truth, years spent on other people's expectations. Sometimes sadness comes, sometimes a sense of guilt, sometimes regret.
But now she knows this is not weakness, but memory. These are traces of the old life, which do not need to be cut out. They remind her of what she had to go through to return to herself. Now the woman does not fight for a place in the world. She creates it. Not through control, not through power, not through strength, but through internal presence. She can be alone, but not lonely. Her loneliness is filled. She can be in a relationship, but without losing herself. She can be a mother without dissolving in her children. She can be with a man without becoming his shadow. This is a new form of existence, mature, free, independent of the external. When a woman accepts her shadow, she stops being afraid of the light, because she understands strength is not in perfection, but in integrity. She does not try to be good, she chooses to be honest, and this honesty gives her power, not over others, but over her own life. Someone will say that she has changed, and they will be right. But this is not change, this is return. She did not become different, she stopped being a stranger. And now, when there is no splitting inside, the world ceases to be a threat. Everything that happens becomes a mirror of her internal state. She no longer seeks meaning, she lives it. That is why women after 40 seem insane to those who are not ready for the truth, because they no longer play. They do not pretend. They do not agree to half measures. They are no longer victims, but they are not goddesses either. They are simply people, alive, imperfect, free. Their madness is a form of wisdom that those who live in the illusion of control cannot understand. When a woman stops being afraid to be herself, she becomes dangerous, not because she threatens, but because she is independent. It is impossible to manipulate someone who no longer needs approval. It is impossible to control someone who has stopped fearing loneliness. It is impossible to break someone who no longer seeks salvation. Such a woman is neither a storm nor peace. She is the truth. If you recognized yourself in these words, write in the comments, "I no longer run from pain." Let's see how many here are ready for the truth. If you feel that it is time to meet your shadow, write, "My darkness is my strength." Let's create a community of those who are not afraid to look inside. If you are ready to stop playing roles, write, "I am taking off the masks." We will see who here is ready for a real life. If this video has changed
Something in you, write, "I accept my shadow." Write it as a commitment to yourself. This is only the beginning, because the path of a woman after 40 is not the end of the story. This is the moment when everything false burns down to make room for the real. This is not the destruction of the family, but the birth of truth. Not the loss of stability, but the finding of oneself. This is not madness. This is a return to life.